Okay, ကျေးဇူးတင်ပါတယ် NUG CRPH group ကိုကျေးဇူးအများကြီးတင်ပါတယ်ဒီ panel idea ကို propose လုပ်တော့ for your acceptance and eagerness. Why is it important that we have to have a good discussion? Because I always quite keen to have your voices heard. သိချင်တယ်ကြားချင်တယ်ဒီလိုဆရာမရောက်တော့ public intellectual, so it's time for us to think. စဉ်းစားမယ်စကားပြောမယ် so please join in today. So Siama Mathida, I've been following you all this week with my notebook. I learned a lot. Thank you very much. Thank you to Dr. Chris as well. Okay, so you've been doing two things once you've been here. So external engagement, Biore. External engagement is important. Why? Because as you said in Murdoch, one of the things you said is, this revolution is the revolution by the people of Myanmar for ourselves, by ourselves. Partly because people are not interested and partly because they don't know very much. That knowledge, under awareness. So I meet with politicians a lot, right? So we go around and do lobbying. Sadly, we find ourselves having to brief them again and again and again. We can't go beyond. We've done the introduction. Let's talk higher level stuff. Not go back, who we are, what we do. Me online is that. So we feel like, come on, we've talked to you before, you don't bloody understand us. That is our problem. We have to promote it a lot. And we bring them in. So that is hard. Perhaps Yama might get some insights into why we can't really promote our cause. I know the world has a lot of problems, but Myanmar case seems to be a little bit fallen by the wayside, despite all of our efforts. Can't get out of it. So maybe you got me thinking. Maybe we don't need a box. You know what the box is when you got me thinking. The old world style you got me thinking. Because our crisis is human rights crisis. But the problem is human rights is a Western concept. Developed in the West and imported from the West. True. But that is changing. So human rights rhetoric that we go for, when we meet politicians, human rights crisis. That was fine in the Gabahama because the Western nations were powerful then. China, Russia, and unfortunately China is supporting the military. So we are as Yama Byodo, always the world and ASEAN. Love ASEAN. No? Any hagale always about thinking chinny. Elagale tua Kabaga tua, they beat up ma a you, same moving Zaro. ASEAN, maybe no soft. That is the out of box we have to think. ASEAN is hopeless. ASEAN can change. So I said in media, can change if they have a political will, but is there a political will? Probably not, maybe now. So we have to push for ASEAN to be effective. Or think out of box and bypass ASEAN. Find a new, completely new way in the new world, away from the old world. So that is the thinking we have to have, because this is our opportunity. This is our chance, yeah? This is the last battle. And Siamao, I've been following you, I've been listening to what you said. The question I thought I would ask, but you've answered it, is about passive use of social media. We use it, but we don't really think. So we should be the active users rather than passive users. I think you've done it well. I just want to emphasize that social media, the most important thing is now, because Myanmar propaganda machine is working very well, well-funded, they have money, and educated people. Some of them are supporting, so they're quite, savvy about the world affairs, who to speak to, which PR firm to hire. We have to skill up, step up, so it's most important now. Okay? Siama, I want you to tell our people what you said in the Murdoch and Curtin about fear. We speak up because but there are other people who are not speaking up. And you had a question. How do you feel? I feel resentful. I don't like those. That Siama said, no, maybe it's our jobs. I learned that. Our job to get them understand, to get them come in. Maybe we can debate that. I think I learned that a lot. You said, if we don't speak up, we lose our freedom. And therefore, we lose our consciousness. Unless you take a lot of drug, right? You lose your freedom, you lose your consciousness, and you lose your identity. So perhaps, Yama, maybe we can, community net, maybe we can expand on that. Thank you.
I think maybe go.
I think both, because we have some known.
Oh, yes. Well, I think when I was asked at one of the events, and when I was asked why you seems like you have no fear, but I said, of course, I do have fear. My fear to let my country in that despair forever is far, far greater than my fear of my own security. That's all, Everybody has fear. Fear is just a normal kind of psychological reflection to one difficult situation. It happens to anyone else. So fear is very normal. Fear is not the monster. So fear is okay, but how to deal with it and how to handle with it, this matters. And depending on how we do, we have becoming a different persons. That's all. That's what I understand. But on the other hand, people. I also noticed that people don't want those who are not very active, who becoming pretty much silent, and so people, the other blame those kind of people. But for me, yes, as I answer at Cotton, what I felt is, okay, this is the signal how, as a public intellectual or as a writer, I still need to work on that issue. That's the signal for me, Okay, this is your job and you didn't yet fulfill your job very well. That's why people still remain in that very dilemma or the uncertain about their own position. I normally told to the international community, what's the significance of this 2021 Spring Revolution? People just simply said, without our consent, nobody can govern us. Throughout the history, this is the first time ever people show how much they do know their role and how they show how they can stand against the coup and the military dictatorship. So that's why this is very important, and right now, for that reason, I think to convince why our issue has been pretty much ignored and neglected by the war. Maybe a couple of other reasons. One of the reasons is we still remains a minority. Myanmar speaking people is pretty much minority. The Buddhist is also minority. And in ethnicity, Myanmar is not big. Among them, we are divided ourselves, using the identity politics to play too much against each other. So how comes? Without having a one front, only one and only front, who else will notice us? We cannot get a mutual audience behind us. For Palestinians, the Muslim community is a mutual audience for them. For Ukrainians, Anglo-Saxons and the Christian communities behind them, something like that. For us, how much? And the ASEAN also, well divided. ASEAN is not a proper political union. For that reason, I think for me is instead of making a strategy to getting rid of anyone else or putting them aside, I just want to make them include and believe in what we believe. That will be the good strategy. To be frank, I started writing at the age of 16 when I became a first year medical student, and then I started writing short story. So it's normally not very good idea, So people just say, oh, why don't your parents never ever prohibit you to write these short stories instead of learning your medical schools, things like that. And I normally said, okay, I have a strategy. Before I started writing my short stories, and my background idea is I want my parents to believe in what I believe. I want my parents to understand how the role of the literature and arts is very important, not just for my future, but also for the future of the country. Then I convince them a lot. I explain them a lot. Then I just try to be a good medical student, not a very brilliant one, but I just trying my duty as a medical student to learn the subjects very well. But at the same time, I couldn't give up my hobby, my interest, something like that. So I think either to ASEAN or China or US, whatever the country, first thing we need to convince them. Our aims and objectives of the Spring Revolution is not just for the benefit of ourselves. It's for the benefit of the whole humanity, because this is the very homegrown idea from the grassroots people. Without our consent, we cannot let anyone to govern us. This is very strong message for me. So we just need to share this message with them. This is very important and very strong, very powerful, until and unless they notice what's our real objectives, and then they might becoming part of our mutual audience. Then we can start it changing the whole things. But instead, most of our people, we just try to use our own rulers, the measurers, to say, ASEAN, you are not good, and China, you are too much, you are just exploiting us, something like that. But in the whole global context, you know, they already have their own role. So how we are very small and we never ever have a good significant role in the globe. How comes we can just dictate them to support us? No, we need a strategy to convince them. We just need to share why we are important, why we are, maybe we are the precursor of what we all aim for, something like that. We are not distinct, separate human beings. We are part of the globe, part of the global citizen. The way we love the freedom is the same, something like that. In order to prove that, we need strategy. Otherwise, we will never ever have a neutral audience to support us.
Thank you, Siama. With amazing advice we have. Wonderful, thank you. Now I'm going to turn to Dr. Chris Lind. So you've been a reader, you've been a thinker, and I just want to talk to us about maybe at a broad level, from your observation, what role do you think literature, stories, reading, catching up, with news, what role these has played as a form of political resistance? We're not just reading for pleasure since 2021. We're reading, catching up, thinking, a form of political resistance to the Myanmar coup. What do you think these stories and reading has played a role as a political resistance? Thank you. And how important these are in our fight to gain back democracy? Thanks.
Thanks very much, Matui, and Dr. Theda as well. I think stories are profoundly important for what we call our Spring Revolution and the roadmap that we need to take forward in the way that Siama Theda just outlined as well, the way we need to think outside the box. Trying to respond to some of the key points, I think, from that lecture. I think part of the need is probably to tell new stories or reframe our story. And by that I mean, for a long time, and that's partly due to the sadness of our history as well, however many decades we have been under military occupation, is that international perception of Myanmar has traditionally been one of victims, one of, where you might lend humanitarian assistance, and we need humanitarian assistance, don't get me wrong. But I think our narratives over time have shifted quickly, and the coup has definitely accelerated that shift. Where we were pre-coup and even where we are in the last 5 years is vastly different. And I think we need to find new narratives, new stories to actually, to project that, because we are no longer people of victims. Yes, there are victims. There are loads of innocent victims back in our home country. Innocent victims, young people under 40, people who don't have that many, that much life prospects in the way we do here. So there are we are victims, but we're not just victims, because we are 5 or 6 years now into what we call the Spring Revolution. The military had never foreseen that resistance would last so long. And that's inside the country, but it's also as much to do with our diaspora community. Because our diaspora communities here in Australia, Perth, the US, wherever else, we're the lifeblood of and supporting the people on the ground. So we're no longer victims. I think we're what we call agents, or I think, to use Matt Theda's words, we're subjects, and we have to see ourselves as subjects. And I think that shifting, reframing of that narrative, that story of us from victims to agents is really important, because our predicament, our crisis, our situation in Myanmar is, I think, if you ask me, a long-term solution can only come from within. It can't come from without. And I think in the early, but maybe part of the sadness of the situation is we're still waiting for the US to act, or we might still be wondering where the UK is and where other countries might come into play. We do need that international community to put that pressure, to exert, to do whatever they can to provide humanitarian assistance. But long-term solutions to our problems, our issues, is only going to come from within. It can't come from without. If it comes from without, there'll be too many other vested interests. And to be frank, there isn't that much real interest yet anyway, because if there was, action would have been taken. So I think it's in the same way we've talked about ASEAN, for example. ASEAN it's like Mathida says, or Matwe says, it's designed to do what it's there to do. Also, the harsh reality of ASEAN is it's comprised of, there might be 10 member states. How many of those member states are dictatorships and autocratic governments themselves? So what interest do they genuinely have to make a concerted, meaningful change for a relatively small neighboring country like Myanmar? So that is a lonely truth, I think, but nonetheless, it's also an empowering truth to know that we have been, we're no longer victims. We are fighting that fight, and that fight has continued to sustain itself.
Thank you, Dr. Lindis. More thoughts and directions. Thank you. Now, your turn. I know some of you want to ask questions. Can we get first question from the audience? Put your hand up, please. Yes.
မြန်မာလိုတန်လို့မြန်မာလိုပဲနေပြီနော်ကျမရဲ့ဒီတပတ်တာဖတ်တဲ့အရာမှာဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ဥပမာဒေါက်တာဆာဆာက American တယ်လီတော်အောက်လို့တော်တော်ပြီးစကားပြောတော့အခုကိုပေါ့တော့ရုပ်ရှင်ရိုက်ပြီးပြောနေတာဟာတချို့ကစာဖတ်တယ်နဲ့တချို့ကရုပ်ရှင်ကအသက်ရှင်တယ်ကျမအတွက်ဆိုကျမရုပ်ရှင်ချင်တယ်ဒါကြောင့်မို့လို့ဒီဟာလေးရတယ်ဒီစိတ်တပိုင်းတော့ဆမမတိလာပြောတော့သူတို့ရဲ့ဒီတင်ပြမှုတွေဟာတာသွားတယ်လို့ကျွန်မမြင်တယ် because ကျွန်မတို့ရဲ့နေရာကြီးကိုတွားဖို့ငါပြဖြစ်ဖို့ဆိုတော့ခဲရင်နော်ငါပြဖြစ်ဖို့တွားဖို့ဆိုတာလိုအပ်တာရှိတယ်ကျွန်မဆိုရင်ကိုကြီးတွေ့ရတယ်မဟုတ်ဘူးကျွန်မအိန္ဒိယတွားခဲ့တယ်နှစ်ပတ်ကောနေခဲ့တယ်လူပရိသတ်ရှာတယ်နော်အဲ့ဒါကျွန်မရဲ့ဘဝအတွေ့အကြုံဒါပေမဲ့ဒီနေ့ကြားလိုက်တဲ့ဘယ်နေရာမှာဆေးရုံဆောက်နေဆိုကျွန်မဝင်တာပါဒါလေးတွေကဒီစိတ်တပိုင်းတော့ခရစ်ပြောတယ်လို့ပဲကျွန်မတို့က victim ကိုမဟုတ်ဘူး we are star subject and doer ဒီလူတွေအနောက်မှာထိုင်နေတဲ့လူတွေကခဏဝတ်တယ်ခဏဝေးလူနေတာတွေရတယ်ဒီစိတ်တွေဒါချင်းနေတာကိုလည်းပြတယ်သူတို့စူးစမ်းနေတယ်ခဏကဘာကြီးမှာပြောတယ်လို့ပဲအီရန်အစိုးရလေးကောင်ရှိတယ်ဆိုပါစို့ရုရှားကရောအီရန်နဲ့နောက်ကိုရီးယားဆိုပါစို့ဒါပေမဲ့အခုစပိန်တို့ကစလာတဲ့အတွေ့အခေါ်မျိုးပြည်သက်ကစလာတဲ့အတွေ့အခေါ်မျိုးထိတ်ကြီးဖြစ်ဖို့မလို့အလဲလေးပူပေါင်းပြီးဆောင်ရွက်နေဆိုတာမျိုးကဆရာမကလည်းပြောတယ်ကဘာကြီးရဲ့အပြောင်းအလဲတစ်ခုပဲဖြစ်တယ်ဒီဟာနဲ့ fit ဖြစ်ဖို့မမဘယ်လိုလုပ်ရမလဲဆိုတာကျွန်မရင်ကြီးတော့ပြောရမယ်ဆိုရင်ဒေါ်စုသားဒီပြည်မှာရှိတယ်သူလည်းသူ့အမေလွတ်မြောက်ဖို့ကြိုးစားနေတယ်ဒီမှာလည်းဒီဘက်ကလူတွေကပါဝင်အားပေးနေတယ်အထူးသဖြင့်သူ့မွေးနေ့လို့သူ့ပွဲလေးပေါ့နော်ဆိုတော့ဒါလေးတွေကဆရာမပြောတဲ့ဒီ doers ပေါ့ဘေကောကဒါလေးကအကျုံးဝင်မှာသလားဒီဒိတ်တွေကိုပေါ်လွင်မှာသလားလို့မေးချင်တာဖြစ်တယ်ဥပမာကျမတို့ရုပ်ရှင်ပြမယ်နောက်ပတ်မှာဒီရုပ်ရှင်ကြီးကြည့်ခြင်းအပြင်စာဖတ်မှတစ်ခုလည်းတော့မဟုတ်ဘူးတချို့ကစာဖတ်တယ်မမလည်းကျမတို့ကိုယ်တိုင် Facebook ဖတ်တယ်ဒီပေါင်းစုံဖတ်တယ်ဒါပေမဲ့ဒါလေးတွေကနေဆွဲထုတ်ပြီးတော့ယူပါဆိုတော့ဒါလေးတွေကိုအားပေးပြီးတော့ဘယ်ဟာကိုကောင်းနေလို့များလမ်းပြပေးရင်ကျမတို့တို့ပြန်ပြီးတော့ထိရောက်တယ်နားထောင်ပြီး
Thank you. Yes.
ကောင်းပါတယ်ရုပ်ရှင်လည်းကောင်းတယ်ဒါပေမဲ့လေဒီမှာနောက်ထပ်လုပ်လို့ရနိုင်တဲ့ဟာတခု book club လို့ဟာမျိုးပေါ့နော်ကျွန်မဒီဘက်က season လို့တွားတွေ့ခဲ့တဲ့ဒီ MPs လား Mr. Sam Lim เนาะသူနဲ့ပြောတဲ့ခါကျတော့ဒီ multicultural infrastructure grant ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်သူကဒီလို building တို့လိုမျိုး project တခုခုလုပ်ပေးနိုင်နေဆိုရင်ကျွန်မက book club လုပ်လို့ရတဲ့ library လိုဟာမျိုးပေါ့နော်ဆိုတော့ space တခုရသွားမယ်အဲ့ဒီမှာစာကိုခုနလိုတချို့ကစာဖတ်မတန်ဘူးသို့တော့ပြဿနာမရှိဘူးစာဖတ်တန်တဲ့သူတွေကသူတို့ဖတ်ထားတဲ့စာအုပ်တွေကိုပြန်ပြီး share လို့ရတယ်ကျမတို့ကဒီ social media platform တစ်ခုတည်းကနေပြီးတော့မှစာဖတ်နေတာအလုံးမဖြစ်ဘူးပေါ့နော်ဒါတဲ့ပြောရလို့ရှိရင်ဒီထက်မကဖတ်ဖို့လိုလာတယ်ဆိုတော့လူတိုင်းကမလုံနိုင်ဘူးဒါကိုကျမနားလေတယ်အဲ့အတွက်ကြောင့်မလို့လုံနိုင်တဲ့သူတွေကလုံပြီးတော့ပြန်ပြီးတော့ပြောတဲ့ဟာပေါ့နော်အကျဉ်းချုပ်ကလေးပြန်ပြောပြတယ်ပြောပြတာကိုနားထောင်ရင်းမှကိုတကယ်စိတ်ဝင်စားရင်အဲ့စာအုပ်ကိုလိုက်ဖတ်လို့ရတယ်ဆိုတာမျိုးပြန်ရှာဖတ်လို့ရတယ်ပေါ့နော်ဆိုတော့အဲ့ဒါပေါ့နောက်တစ်ခုကခုနလက်ကျန်မှာကျွန်မပြောချင်တာလေးတစ်ခုရှိလို့ကျွန်မပြောခဲ့တော့ကဒီဗလဲout of box ကိုမပြောချင်ဘူးကျွန်မ box ကိုဖယ်ပလိုက်ချင်တာပေါ့နော် box မပါဘဲစဉ်းစားရအောင်ပေါ့နော်ကျွန်တော်တို့ကိုသွင်းထားတဲ့လူမျိုးရေးတွေဘာသာရေးတွေအဲ့ဒီ box တွေအကုန်လုံးကိုဖယ်ပလိုက်ချင်ပြီဖယ်လိုက်ပါအဲ့ဒါတွေမပါလဲကျွန်တော်တို့ကလူသားမှန်ရင်လူသားဆိုတာခံစားတတ်တယ်ဟလာနော်တုံ့ပြန်တတ်တယ်ဒါအတူတူပဲလူတိုင်းဟာဒီလိုပဲရှိတာပဲဆိုတော့အဲ့လူသားဆိုတဲ့အခြေခံပေါ့နော်မြန်မာနိုင်ငံသူနိုင်ငံသားဆိုတဲ့အခြေခံကနေပြီးတော့နောက်တစ်ခုအာဆီယံနဲ့ပတ်သက်ရင်လည်းခုနလိုပဲသူတို့အမျိုးမျိုးဖြစ်နေတယ်ဆိုတာထက်ကျွန်တော်တို့ကနေရာပြောင်းပြီးနိုင်ငံတည်လို့မရအောင်lock ကြသွားပြီဒါကတော့အသေးကြသွားပြီပေါ့နော်နိုင်ငံပြောင်းပြီးနေရာပြောင်းပြီးနိုင်ငံတည်လို့မရတဲ့အတွက်ကြောင့်မလို့ဒီအရှိတရားတွေကိုအကောင်းဆုံးဘယ်လိုကင်တွယ်မလဲဆိုတာပဲကျမတို့လုပ်လို့ရတယ်ညင်းပယ်ခြင်းနဲ့အလုံးမဖြစ်ဘူးပေါ့နော်အဲ့ဒီဟာလေးကိုတစ်ချက်စဉ်းစားဖို့ပေါ့ဆိုတော့အဲ့ဒီ box ကိုဖယ်ထုတ်လိုက်ပြီးတော့မှကျမတို့ရွေ့မယ်ဆိုရင်တော့ still အလုပ်ဖြစ်တယ်လို့ထင်တယ်
And I just want to say thank you to panel members too for your insights on what's actually in Burma. Now, and it's really kind of a segue to what each one of you have said about world leaders as well as governments not actually really being interested in what's actually going on in Burma. And we all know that as part of the governments want to know what will they get from it. Every world leader wants to know what they're going to get from it. And as we know, Burma has not really been in the highlight because they can't see what they can actually get from Burma. Now, March 2018 and I have actually gone to state government leaders, and one of the things they actually said was the leading trade, and we can actually say this, the leading trade is, I think it was bags that they could actually trade with Burma. We know that that's not the truth. Yeah. Okay, we know that wasn't the truth. But to actually really state it out loud, people were absolutely unaware of all the resources that Burma actually has got that they could actually trade with Burma on. And therefore Burma's not going to be seen as a country that they're going to be interested in. So I think there needs to be a lot of awareness, and I know social media can actually be a great platform to actually spread the word around about what governments can do as trading partners with Burma, because we know Burma was what the golden rice bowl of Southeast Asia at one stage. It was one of the wealthiest in the world, but it's now been suppressed because people don't know. Social media hasn't been around, but now that we do have social media, we can actually make that algorithm with the truth out there for the people, and it needs to be not only in the Burmese language, and I know that I use AI, and I apologise, I can't read the Burmese language. I use AI to actually read what's actually in the statements, just so I am more aware of what's going on. Plus I go up to these events. Okay, so I think awareness is really, really important through literature, but social media can also be part of it. Let the world know about how we can trade, because that if we actually think about world leaders, what do they look at?
Yeah.
It's themselves. If you look at Trump even, what is it that he wants? He wants the oil, right? And therefore, that's why he's actually doing all this. What's he want? And that's what we need to do.
Yes, it's so true. So that reminded me. So that is where we are at. We make suitcases. That's all. So we're talking about human rights and regional security, and so politicians are by sanction. Suitcase and we need to climb up to that. So yes, that was. We felt very, very low at this point. Is that all you think of us, making suitcases, therefore sanctions not needed? Bloody hell. Okay, so be aware. It's hard truth. It's hard, truth hurts, but that's where we were at. Thank you.
Well, in my points, I rather not to choose to say, since we are rich in natural resources, someone needs to target us as a strategy to terminate the military dictatorship. But I think we have another resources, very strong resources, that is human resources. We have a youth population is so high, and our turnover voters rate is very high, still very high. Burmese are average, very political. So that's very good. I think in Europe and in other countries, facing the population deficit and the age population is bigger than their working population. That's why they're going to face another economic problems based on that. So we can show not just the natural resources, we do have human resources. We can give them the example of a lot of the educated middle class people are now moving to Thailand to make some to make some social and economic impact, especially in Chiang Mai area. That's a very good example, So for that reason, I think we should be proud of our own, and we should show not just our natural resources. Our human resources are very important. So both of them can be managed pretty well and balanced. Otherwise, I don't want my country to be the ground for the fight between the natural resource hunters, giants.
Thank you. More questions? Meme. Guterres, meme. Maybe. Haven't decided. Okay.
That's a very good question. More of observation, and then I will try and tap on your perception of your experience. I've just returned from China last week, and then all along since the revolution, my advocacy has always been China holds the key to Myanmar. I know there's been many contradictions, certain occurrences makes China look very bad, but the reality, in my opinion, our problems are mainly self-inflicted in terms of our own leadership that has suppressed the people. It's not something that's been happening now, it's been happening for the last 70-odd years. So we need to be very careful when we try to, say, go on attack against China. Having seen what China provides for its people in terms of its leadership, in terms of its organizations, welfare of its people, I would think it's second to none at this moment in time. In terms of, say, economic prosperity, the ability to manage infrastructure, far more superior than the United States. I would categorically say that. So having observed all these, my thinking or my appeal to those in the intellectual scene, how do we convince China that Myanmar could be a better use to them in terms of their resources, in terms of their I wouldn't point humanitarian aspect because Chinese Communist Party still has their own way of doing things. But how do we convince China that we could be of benefit to them in terms of, say, our Spring Revolution or our government that we envisage, that we could engage with them to make them help us? Let's say, for instance, Singapore. If you look at Singapore, the investment from China is probably 60 to 70%. And then they still welcome Chinese investment. That goes to show when you have good governance and managed by proper people, Chinese investment is welcome. Whereas in Myanmar, it appears to be manipulative because it ends up in the wrong hands. So what we need to be really conscious of is Myanmar is being destroyed by its very own people, not the external elements. And dealing with the external elements, you need to be very diplomatic, you need to be very focused in engagement. So, Siama Dotwekwe, I'd like to know your opinion because you are in international studies here. I know at times we have very, I wouldn't say negative opinions of China, but how do we transform those negatives into positives? And I think that's a very important aspect for our Spring Revolution. I'd like to hear your opinion. Thank you so much.
I mean, China is the beast we have to deal with. As you said, we can't move country. And we have to be sophisticated about it. I'm not sure we have been not at our level, at the governmental level. Because we have a lot of things to bargain with. Whether we can't tell them to, go away. They will be here. I would say we use our agency, as you said, we have agency. Whether that has been maximized or not, I'm not sure. For the same reason, have we been getting good advice? Because advice is important, whether we listen to or not. I think in that sense, perhaps the other side has done quite well in terms of getting the support, turn it around. China was, in my professional opinion, sitting on the fence for a long time. Perhaps we missed the boat there, but the boat hasn't sailed properly because, as we all knew, Chinese were not too keen on Myanmar. They didn't think very highly of his capability, and they still prioritize stability. So we can capitalize on that aerodynamic stability. So they're not gone yet. The boat has left, but perhaps not too far. Thank you.
Well, in my opinion, I think of course, China's is important. The problem is we don't have a singular voice out of the Spring Revolution. And so many different stakeholders, for example, like NUGs, its foreign policy towards China is a little bit different from the voices from the CSO and voices from the individual ethnic groups. So that's the key challenge. For China, what I understand, China never ever impressed by Myanmar's capability of governance, even though they support the coup. But China is not sitting on the fence. China is behind everyone. So since the individual ethnic armed forces, since they are pretty small and they just need some kind of the big support, so they just see China as part of the key funders, something like that. So for that reason, they convinced China, then they were ended up being trapped by China. That's the reality on the ground. So until and unless we do have a singular voice and the strategy towards China, we cannot win that fight. Because China also, we do need to notice its growth. its growth is not just in economy, but also in politics too. Right now, I see the China society itself has been changed, especially after the Olympic in 2008, but especially after the COVID period. The grassroots movement within China it should not be underestimated, and we never ever try to having a people-to-people approach. We always let the G2G approach, the Chinese CCP government and the military government, and the low-level grassroots P2P approach is being pretty much undermined, also from ourselves. So I think there will be another chance, and the most important thing is the united front for the Spring Revolution, having a singular strategy towards China. Right now, China is facing, this group is pretty much easily be manipulated by us, and that group is pretty strong and pretty much pro-Western or something like that. That's the failure of the strategy. That's why I can say, let's forget about the box, identity politics and other. Then we will overcome.
Goes on.
Thank you. It's a very good answer.
Thank you for letting me ask a question. I have two questions. One is from the listening from the Siama Madida Sanjam literature talk about why the world is now bad guy and corrupt guy and having position to rule in the country, most of the country now. And all the good people are now not in a position. So why this happening? I'd like to know that one. Luzuri or not, the Chinke, no? Chasa near Yaga, General Bugonia, no Niam Shiki now, Bama, Upin, Samapio. Another one question is we have imagine to the old world from the new world, we lack of the young people involved in our movement. As I'm doing the community here, experience now we still see like a same old face, and then we are, as you know, we all stuck in the old mind. It's been rooted in our mind, over 60 years. So we need the young people to be coming into our movement. So how can we do that? I need advice from there. Shama Martina and Christine. So thank you.
Do you want to take the first question? I'll take the second one.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think let's again get rid of the box. No more old style of our steps, new approach, new direction, new layers to dig. Sometimes we just pretty much superficial all the time. Learn about what the others thinking, learn about what the others doing. That will be the key, especially for the younger generation or the others. And then I think why the whole war is, the in the middle population of pretty much intellectual but negligent and being silenced. That's the biggest problem. That's why it sounded like, in every society, the naughty boys are louder than everyone else. So, so if we don't want the loudest voice from them, we need to raise our pitch, the pitch from the good people or the in the middle. That population is bigger than ever, Right now, some people, why they kept silent and they just fed up with this kind of the very lousy, noisy, bad voice, something like that. So, but being silent cannot help anyone else. So make your own voice, not just making noise, just raise your voice, very firm, very subtle, but very determined voice from this population. So that's why I think for example, like among ASEAN, when we say if one country or one group, if it is very small, it won't matter. But how about Timor? Timor last year. It's very small. Population is really, really small, but it's strong. It's still making its voices out loud. Not loud, but very firm, not very aggressively imposing their thoughts and their decision, but very firm. So that matters, even among the ASEAN. So that's why I think more and more countries, more and more groups, and the big majority silenced people should raise their voices firmly and determinedly.
The question goes on. So your question is around how do we engage the youth? The youth in our communities. I have to be careful because I've got a few grey hairs on the side too, so I don't know if I can be qualified as youth, but I think I've got two answers for you and for us to think about. I think the first one is opportunities. Identifying young people within our community that have what I would call the disposition, the interest in politics, the ability to speak, and these are people who will be community leaders in their own right, from within our ethnic groups, for example, or within our general community. But they need the opportunity to do so. They need the forums to do so. They need the connections to do so. Now, in major political parties like the Labour Party, for example, there are structures in place to help young people engage in politics, particularly young women, for example, or people from multicultural backgrounds. But then to do that, you're within the constraints of a political party. Although that would be, I'd say, one way, because you can learn from within that. You can be mentored by people to participate and to engage and to, I suppose, know. Because I always think if you're going to make noise within our society here, you have to know the ways of our society. And that's why I've always, in my own work, both in my profession, but in my advocacy, I always say education. I always talk about literacy. I talk about, all those things are really important to build those little, you won't see the immediate steps, but what you're doing is putting the seeds in place to bring a generation of younger Burmese Australians to be given that opportunity, to have that interest and to have those tools to speak. So that's a longer term aim. I'd say the second one, just very quickly, is when we attend events like this, you're quite right. A lot of our attendees are people from, your generation, and maybe slightly the generation under, but not too many people from my generation, and certainly not from the generation under me. And I wonder, and this is not an answer, but it's a thought and something I've been thinking about and sharing with Mathida. I do wonder if we need a way to talk about and relate to young Burmese Australians in a way that speaks to their experience, because if we think about them, they're no longer just Burmese, they're Burmese Australian. Even if both their parents are Burmese, the values, the interests, their language, they grow up in an Australian context. So we have to think about how do we frame our memories, our experiences, as to be directly applicable to them and not just to their parents. So I think that's my two-pronged answer.
Thank you. I think, Kuzaman, in this sense, you and Ko Momo and Chris Karen Ram, we have had quite a bit of success in getting younger generations in. Look at Kaun. Kaun is our hero. So he definitely he has a special expertise, of course, in IT, and he helps us. And then we have some younger woman as well. And I think you've done well in that. So I thought, applaud to you guys. Thank you. Any more questions before we conclude? Yes, Hyun.
Thank you, Mathida. Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Martin Swe. My question is around creating a sense of national identity, particularly because I am an academic as well, and having witnessed the destruction of the education sector in Myanmar, I'd like to know if you have any outside of the box strategies to create a sense of national identity for those that are outside of Myanmar. And in particular, because I lived in Thailand for about 5 years around the coup period and COVID-19. And so I met Bo'o, Shan, migrant workers, and when you speak to them, they don't see Myanmar as their country. They don't have a sense of belonging. So yeah, do you have any suggestions for that? And should we be thinking about cultivating that national identity before a solution is reached?
Well, yeah, I am talking about the collective identity, and I wrote a very long poem called "Let's Have a Collective Dream." You know, because yeah, this is urgently needed, and it was in 2014. Yeah, pretty long ago, and I started talking about and writing about that things. Let's have a collective dream and collective identity. I think, yeah, obviously I'm not Burma, but I think to having a sense of belonging is the key role. So I think we all do love the Myanmar as countries, our roots. You know, everybody just loves the roots, and we just need to acknowledge, you know, the practice of the individual ethnic or religious groups, tradition and language. It should be granted, but it should not be the cause of disunity. You know, right now, the way people portray their individual group identity is more on the separation, not just the unity, something like that. So in order to have a national identity, my poetry is just very simple. You know, it's focused on let's have mutual understanding and mutual trust in non-discrimination. You know, we all need to say our identity is based on no discrimination, and we based on the mutual respect. That's should be the ground, but on top of that, every individual group can adopt any religion or the ethnic identity or the language or anything. That should be okay. You know, we need to open our hearts. Otherwise, you know, we cannot find the ground for the national identity. So I'm not sure. I really wonder if the academic university should hold some kind of the panel discussions among the different groups from Myanmar to start thinking, making how can you say your sense of belonging based on what, you know. So for me, my sense of belonging is just the whole country, and I used to say I always feel I'm the most responsible person for my country, you know. So I don't care who is not responsible for my country or not. I just do care how much I can and take my responsibility as someone who's most responsible for the country, something like that. So let's see beyond our immediate identity to reaching out to the collective identity. So that will be the sense. Yeah.
Can I just very quickly add something to that as well? So everything that Makita said, but also I think using not just politics as a springboard. And I think, of course, that's the most important because politics is so important to us with everything that's happening back home. But also using, you know, the arts, films, stories, as a way that people can broadly relate. And I'll say this because we recently met with Sam Lim, the Honourable Sam Lim MP, and one of his advice was very much that as well. When you're advocating as a group, the first thing is unity as a singular message. When you've got very different messages portrayed across, it's hard for politicians to keep track of those messages and also to reconcile all of those interests. But the second thing that he said was, who are your most representative bodies? So we said, you know, WA Myanmar Democratic Network, you know, all of course, not just politically engaged, but also cultural and socially engaged, but using the arts and stories as a springboard to try to, you know, think about what belonging looks like and in ways that frame it in positive ways.
Yeah.
classrooms. And I think that's really, really important. Sports is a great way of bringing everyone together.
Yes.
Arts is a great way of bringing everyone together. Like in, not only in communities, but it also happens in classes, because we've got diverse number of students from very different countries. It's about working together as one, having that common goal. That common goal is really, really important, not just in politics, but it's in everything that you do. And we know sense of belonging is a universal need. We all need that, whether it's with, Burmese community, whether it's in a school, whether it's in a family. We all need that sense of belonging, and therefore we can really start putting it together. And I know that we've got a grant that I've talked to Martin Swe about, and I know Martina, you actually talked about it, we talked to Chris about bringing that together. And one of the things they actually spoke to me about, and they've given me the email, we'll actually get that ball rolling, is having a community centre. Community centre where we can all gather together as one. I mean, we all need
Sports
our
facility and library.
Absolutely, embrace your identity. We've got so many ethnic groups in Myanmar, but it's all about working together. I was brought up here, and I can't see why we can't all work together as one. I mean, we're all human beings. We all love each other. So, I think that's really, really important. Yes, embrace our culture. Embrace each person's culture. The dance, the music, the food. We've all got different ethnic groups. But it's the love, I think. It's a love that we need to show each other. And it's for the people in the world to see that we're all united. We can't spread that message at all about not being united, because we are all united. Let's look at each other. Everyone in here is from different ethnic groups in Myanmar, right? Do we not all love each other? And I think that's a message we need to spread.
Yes, so for the final messages for our revolution, not speaking with one voice, division, that is the killer. That will kill us. So whenever we do lobbying, even at the Australian Parliament House, they were listening, but one or two said, hang on, who you represent? You have a lot of other groups. That is the final straw. Go home, back up. You know what I mean? That will kill us. So we have to love each other, united. Thank you.